Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome President of Special Programs at Blue Atlas Group, FBI retired, Army veteran, Professor, Forensic Psychology Specialist, Brig. So welcome, Brig.
Thank you, Karen. Great to be back with you. It's been a few years.
Yes. And obviously a lot happened in that time too. So
I
thanks
would
for
agree, and a
joining.
lot's happened in the last couple months, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like it's accelerating, but anyway. Um, so I'd like to obviously congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us more about yourself and your journey and what led you into your current role?
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I'll just kind of hit some wave tops. But after college, I was in the Army for 5 years. I was based in Italy, actually, and did a tour down in northern Iraq. And then I got out of the Army as a young captain, and then I went into a career with the FBI, where I really was focused on counterterrorism and counterespionage, but mostly counterterrorism. During that time, I was overseas a lot. I was in and out of Africa and the Middle East for about 18 years,
Mhm.
and really loved every minute of it. But I was really focused on, I mainly worked Al Qaeda and ISIS, kind of towards the end. And then since then, after I retired, I've been working still in kind of the national security realm and with private clients. And basically, Blue Atlas Group, this is a kind of exciting new experience for me. They brought me in about a month ago, and I'm running this special programs uh, realm for them.
That's amazing. So can you share with us more about the special programs at Blue Atlas and what you and the group do for those who don't know?
Sure. So basically, again, my trajectory has always been kind of focused on the national security side, protecting Team America along the way, and in Western countries. And so this is kind of culminated here with the Blue Atlas Group, and the focus is again protecting our country, but also with an emphasis on AI. So about 50% of our business is based in our private restricted AI platform, and
Mm.
the other 50% is focused on general counterintelligence areas. The folks that are part of the group are all seasoned counterintelligence professionals, and so we're kind of doing this different with AI, and I can go into that in more detail. But essentially, we want to bring the benefits of AI to the U.S. government and the intelligence community and private clients, but without the concern about really AI in the wild and all the problems that come with that.
Yes. So can you give an overlay of what those global threats are and specifically what the West is currently facing? If you can elaborate, or I don't know if you can share anything about that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's as we mentioned, there's a lot going on. It's frenetic activity all over the world right now, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. A lot, of course, is focused on the Middle East. That continues with Israel's efforts against Hamas. And of course, we have Hezbollah in there. We have Iran, which we could go into more detail if you want. We have the Houthi rebels. So that is still pulsing, obviously. But
And
then
are all
just,
of those, just to ask you, sorry to interject, but are all of those interlinked somehow, or are they all very separate, but just all like bad global threats, just for people who don't know?
yeah, great question, Karen. So, I think we start with who's the enemy, and the enemy, really, enemy number one and two are America and Israel, for some of
Mm.
these nefarious terrorist groups, and they're very much interlinked. That's a great question. Iran is, when I talk about Hezbollah, Hezbollah, I always say equals Iran, right? That's
Yes.
a Shia group. They are a proxy for Iran, as are the Houthi rebels. Hamas is a little bit different, but they also work with, Hezbollah and Iran against the targets of Israel and the U.S. So it's all very much a chessboard, and it's interlinked all over the world. So yes, definitely kind of interconnected.
So, I mean, I think that there is a lot of, just from the media, there's obviously a lot of propaganda, and there's a lot of people who are very ill-educated in this arena. And then, of course, we have like people who are just keyboard warriors on social media, or you have, very divisive media around these, stories and situations. So, like, just going back to the whole thing on Israel and Gaza and Hamas, like, what is it that people actually need to know? Because I think that there's a lot of people that think they understand what this is about, but they really have no idea. So I don't know if you like want to elaborate and like factually actually give accurate you know, analysis on it, because I think there's a lot of people that just, you know, blab on social, talk in the media, but really don't have a clue about what's actually going on.
Yeah, of course. So I think we go back in history a little bit that, this is a perpetual war between Israel and what's going on with Hamas in Gaza. But again, like you said, interconnected to Hezbollah, interconnected to Iran, Houthi rebels. That is very much a cultural kind of a nationalism and also religious war, right? And I don't see us solving that problem overall. But a bigger factor in this for me is as we are in, Western countries, you and I, the folks that are out there that are essentially inspired to become a jihadist, right?
Mm,
They see this as thermonuclear. So this is a trigger for them, whether
mm,
they're sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, or if they're sitting somewhere in the UK or wherever it might be, somewhere in Asia. All that's going on, it really causes action to take
mm.
place. And so you have fence sitters out there that believe in a jihadist ideology, and they want to, continue down that path. But this conversation and everything they see in the news, and like you mentioned, social media, that can all be a trigger, which is very unpredictable to those of us that are working this problem set
Mm.
to action. So we need to consider that no matter where we are. This is a global war, right? And then
Yeah.
I also would just toss in to the cauldron what we're seeing with, as far as threats with Iran. I'm also just going to toss in there China, Russia, and we're seeing collaboration, between these groups. And again, the targets are really Israel, America, and the UK is in there somewhere as well, as you know.
Yeah. So can you go a little more into detail on how you see Iran fitting into the overall picture? Because I think, obviously, people have discussions and spoken to people who are like actually, live and work in those, whether they're reporters or cover those types of stories. But because I think a lot of people fail to understand what a significant role Iran has in all of this, which a lot of people would say is like the head of the snake, basically. So I don't know if that's an accurate analogy on that, but I don't know if you want to just kind of elaborate on Iran and the impact that this is actually having from Iran, because it's always like, Gaza and Israel and Palestine and whatever, but very little is being emphasized on Iran. So I don't know if you can kind of give us some insight into that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think when we look at Iran, I think there's a pit of snakes, and Iran is down in there, and it's one of the head snakes that are causing a lot of things to happen.
Mm,
But, if we look at it, Iran is a theocracy, and everything they do as far as at the governmental level is based on their ideological beliefs or religious beliefs on the Shia side, according to what, Grand Ayatollahs say. So, we
mm.
have that, and we don't get much news out of Iran, right? It's
No.
not open, and it's very controlled. The people of Iran, as you probably know, and I've met so many of them, are amazing people, and many of them don't like their government, right? And it's the same in every country, but a lot of them are repulsed by what the theocracy is doing. So we don't see as much news coverage like we do with Israel and what's going on in Gaza. But yes, Iran is a critical player in all this. I did work Iran many years ago and got a better understanding. Actually went to Farsi school, and that always helped me because I would talk to instructors about, hey, help me understand, your country, your government, and things like that. But Iran is so focused on Israel and the U.S. as targets, and Israel and Iran, I'll say, can be, I'll call it expeditionary. So they will send folks out with their Quds Force out to the U.S. For assassination attempts and poisonings and things like that, or UK. So they are a very serious enemy to the West, and we cannot downplay that. They're just not as prominent in social media and media in general, just because they have everything so controlled.
Yeah, so that actually brings me to another point because I mean, there's no country that's perfect or whatever, but like you say, the attack is on obviously Israel and the US. But I think, there's this whole, I mean, look, I've seen protests in the streets of London, pro-Palestinian, whatever. People are like literally standing for things that they have no understanding of, like no real insight. And so I think one of the questions I have around this is, the fact that what happened on, October 7th, I think it was, with all the Jewish people or the people that were killed at that music festival, um,
Right.
and kidnapped, for the time frame that they were kidnapped. I mean, it baffles my mind, and I mean, maybe you can just give clarification, but it baffles my mind that like people talk about genocide in Palestine, but what did they think the Israelis were going to do? Just take it down, just lay down and take it. Like it's very, confusing. And then it's like if you look even now when they talk about like the Holocaust and remembrance, then suddenly all the people that were like pro-Palestine are suddenly talking about remembrance of, of World War II and the Holocaust. Like the contradictions and hypocrisy is quite astonishing. So I'm just curious, like, your take on that and what people's lack of understanding is around that. Because again, going back to, was the slaughter of the Jewish people and the people at the festival a genocide? Or like, how does this kind of play into the whole Palestinian genocide? And of course, I think, in my view, I mean, I'm not like there and I certainly don't have full insight, but when it comes to, I think a lot of the people in Palestine and Gaza have been used as collateral for by their own governments. And, obviously there's been innocent lives lost and so on. So I don't know if you want to just maybe clarify around that, because I think there's a lot of confusion or people just don't have enough insight.
Yeah, all great points, Karen. I think number one, we have to go back to Iran and just know that they are so connected to Hamas, which we learned especially through October 7th, that they probably funded much of what happened, right? So we can't take our eye off Iran. But yes, I think you're right. Like, and I worked in London, at one point out of the embassy there were constant protests, and a lot of people just like to join the crowd, and they don't understand what is Hamas, what's going on in Gaza, what's this war about. But there are people that do understand it, and they're fervent believers in what's going on, and they stand for the cause. And it's the same in the U.S. You have people that truly understand it and truly believe what they're doing. The one caveat I always like to add is that, and this is my own opinion, that worldwide, as far as Muslims go, very few are ever going to become jihadists, are ever going to take action. Right? What the
Yeah.
percentage is, I don't know. I would never guess, but I would also say we need to understand that small percentage, which can include Hamas terrorists, and it can also include people that get caught up in the Hamas movement, I'll call it, with intention to take action. So we have to understand
Mm.
this enemy. And for me, I'll say, hey, if you're really going to support Hamas, make sure you understand what's in their charter, updated charter, their ideology, and things like that.
Mm.
But I've spent 25 years teaching on this enemy and what to look for, and there is a percentage, and we need to understand them. And but there are folks that don't know what they're doing, why they're in the streets, who knows. They like to get involved, but there are folks that we need to keep an eye on that are going to take action and want, love, death more than they love life. So it is a very real threat.
Yeah, so when it comes to even talking about understanding what's in their charter. I mean, there's stories out of you know Europe where an Italian guy was pro Hamas even though he's not from there, and he ended up going to Gaza or whatever and getting kidnapped and murdered on camera. So I think it's like people don't, again, going back to really understand what it is they're supporting. It's the same thing as, and again, I'm not nothing against obviously gay people, whatever, but the whole gay for Gaza thing, like I'm like, honestly, people going there, thinking that that kind of thing is accepted in places like that is not. And there's a high probability you won't make it out alive. So I'm just curious your opinion and take on those things, because I think that, all these divisive groups and things like that as well, again, where people just don't really have an insight or a real understanding of what's going on. So I'm just curious your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think let's look at it behaviorally, right? So anybody, wants to feel a sense of belonging, right? And I think, and maybe you and I would agree on this, that the electronics, social media has just made us globally more lonely, right? And
Yeah, true.
just feel like we need belonging. And so I think sometimes these folks are looking wherever they can fit in, wherever someone will take them in, and they see, oh, look, there's this Hamas movement. I'll get involved in this. There will be people that will accept me, take me in, and things like that. So, and I also look at like a prison, and I interviewed so many people inside of prisons. When you go into a prison, right, you have to find a group for protection, right? So it might be I'm going to join this Crip gang, or I'm going to join, these kind of radical, Islamic believers over here, whatever it is. But it's all that sense of belonging. And I worked gangs for a few years, and I saw that, like, why did this kid who's 15 get involved in this violent group? And
Mm.
oftentimes it's because didn't have a mentor, and he was just looking for belonging. And so I think that's what we see a lot with these Hamas, folks in particular, but also ISIS believers. They also, kind of get caught up in, I want to be, I want to feel like I belong somewhere. And boy, I just met this guy at the mosque, and he's very charismatic, and he's, kind of calling me over to be part of his small group. So I think behaviorally, we have to also, be aware that that is a draw.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what can you tell us about the continent of Africa? And does this play a role in the bigger picture of what's going on now?
Yeah, so many people think that Africa is a country, right, Gary? So, having been there, so many times in all different places, I say, hey, this is like when I used to fly from London to Joburg. That was an
Mm.
11-hour flight, I think, something like that. You would know better than I would. It's such a large, vast, piece of land, and
Mm.
so kind of critical globally. But what we're seeing, or what I, kind of give some opinions here. The continent is critical to a lot of things that go on in the world. Right now, we're seeing so much ISIS and Al Qaeda activity in the Sahel and West Africa that is
Yeah.
just unheard. It was unheard of. Like I used to watch, things happening, and there was this, AQIM group up in, the Maghreb and in Algeria, and that whole axis of jihad has
Mm.
just dropped down all through, the Sahel and like I said, West Africa, into other places too. But
Mm.
last time I was in Ghana and Togo in West
Mm.
Africa, we were doing kind of an assessment, and there were no, kind of ISIS folks Al-Qaeda type folks, believers, uh, at all in that area. And now it's just replete with them. But I think for me, the big thing with Africa, and I think we have taken our eye off of the ball here with Africa. We do things in Somalia, but I don't see that. I'm not real concerned with folks in Somalia getting on a plane and coming to the U.S. That may be onesies and twosies at most. But the groups of believers in West Africa and Sahel of Africa, I do believe they can be expeditionary. They will get on a plane and fly to the UK or to the US, and they will
Mm.
bring with them, this ideology and how to, kind of grow a terrorist cell with communications. And, we need a financier and we need a leader and we need to procure and things like that. So I am concerned with what that could turn into as kind of a caliphate, burgeoning caliphate at this point.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think that maybe this is an ambitious goal, I don't know, of the US or just on I don't know how much other countries are involved, but do you think that it is possible to eliminate or get rid of or disband Hamas and all of these groups, or do you just see more and more people, like even if they kill off or take those individuals out, do you think that there's just more and more people being recruited through these agencies or through these groups, replacing the people that have lost their lives or been taken out by governments or whatever? I'm just curious, like, do you see it growing, or do you see that there's a way to ultimately eliminate these bad groups of people or entities?
Yeah. Again, great question, Karen, and probably a little bit of a complex answer, but I would say it's absolutely growing. This is so much worse than the war on drugs, quote unquote, as the U.S. has fought and done a great job fighting off, drugs flowing into the U.S. But now we have these, the fentanyl precursors coming directly from
Yeah,
China into the U.S. and killing people pretty much every day. I
they're coming
believe that.
through Canada and Mexico as well.
Exactly. So that war on drugs, continues, but the jihadist side of things, we have probably upwards of 40,000 jihadist attacks globally since 9/11, 2001, and it's just growing exponentially. And every time I look at the statistics, attacks happen in 50, 60 countries every single year. So
Mm.
it's just continuing to grow, and especially with social media and all these different apps and Signal and WhatsApp and all these things, like
Mm.
they can
Yeah,
meet
because people
on.
are being recruited. I mean, I've heard of people, being or tempted recruits, even from people on Twitter, some kids being recruited, or they attempted to recruit kids via Twitter at the time, which is now X, through these platforms. So I think it's quite dangerous. And yeah, I don't know. Like, so do you think that there is a way to eliminate this or reduce it or beat it? I don't know if what's the right word, but I'm
Yeah,
just
I think that
curious.
the unfortunate news is no, we cannot eliminate this. We can displace, targets. We can, in certain areas, we can reduce their impact and radicalization and recruitment and things like that. But we're fighting an ideology, and it's a very contagious ideology globally. And so
Hmm.
the kids, like you're mentioning, again, throw in sense of belonging. They meet someone on Twitter and this guy's inspirational, charismatic, and then they move to direct messaging through Signal, WhatsApp, whatever. But they'll
Mm.
also meet him in video games on Call of Duty. That
Yeah,
it's
true. I've
there
heard
as
about
well.
it. Mm.
Yeah, so yeah, it is just exponentially growing, and it's so contagious that I think we're really playing zone, and I don't see an end in sight. We just have to keep up what we call, CT or counterterrorism pressure, in different countries. And so, but if that's not happening, let's pick country X, whatever it is. If there's no CT pressure, then it's just going to grow, worse and worse because the if you and I are a terrorist cell, we're trying to get where we can do what we want to do without being burdened by the authorities knocking on the door. So if a country is not fighting this, proactively, then, we see an area where there's space, and we can continue to work on our plot.
Yeah. So that leads me to obviously to discuss both the benefits and the downsides of AI. So can you first discuss some of the benefits you see related to counterterrorism, counter-espionage, the border, and maybe by the cartels as a threat to the US and Mexico?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, just going backwards a little bit, we started out when it was probably about November 2022 when Chat GPT really kind of became public and started being used. AI has been around for, 50 years, but it kind of, got into public consciousness about then. And we started with that basic text, natural language AI, right? And it's like, hey, and for me, it's great. Hey, you want to build a basic website for your LLC, like it's magical, right? But 2023, and I think it was kind of wait and see. And then 2024 is where we started seeing malicious use of AI. So we started seeing some bad things happen. And this comes through data poisoning, right? Because all AI is, this conglomerate of data that's input from all these different, ingestions, right?
Mm,
So there's so much inaccuracies, there's so much bias and things like that. But I've read these articles where they poll 100 experts on AI, right? They're in the field, and they say 2025, we expect to see a huge increase in malicious AI and nefarious activity, right? So I
mm,
think we'll see this year, Karen, trusting AI is going to be a lot more difficult because it's so prone to bias and mistakes. But nefarious groups are seeing it as an opportunity. So they can do so many things. And I'm glad to kind of discuss, some of the things that we'll probably see this year.
Yeah, so with that, I mean, also just do you think that, I mean, I know that I don't know if it's in place at the moment, but I mean, there should be some regulation around AI. So I'm just curious on, if there is and what that's going to look like. Because even like I've heard of stories where people have had their voice recorded and then somebody's phoned and said so and so's in an accident and then, they need this money and then they defraud people. So I'm just curious, like, in terms of the negatives of it and how one plans to regulate it to some level of safety or degree to for people. I mean, I don't know if it's past the point of no return, but yeah, I'm just curious on your take.
Yeah, so a couple things there that you hit on I think are critical. So you're kind of talking about technology optimism, as they call it. So, I'm like, oh, I get caught up in it. I'm like, oh, it can do so many things, and I don't know the problems with it. It's kind of like Hamas. Like I'm going to go join the parade going down the street,
Yeah.
near Regent's Park, right? I don't know the reality of things. We see this technology optimism, and it has to be safe, accessible, but not excess regulation. But what we're probably going to see, and you're also talking about multimodal issues where ingestion happens now from, video and voice and, photos and Word documents, PDFs. It's all coming in now. But what we're going to see the rise in at this point, Karen, is the deep fake attacks are going to exponentially rise, phishing attacks, but threat actors are going to really start manipulating data, and they're going to get into your email. They're going to manipulate legal documents. Even things like medical diagnoses,
Mhm.
are going to be impacted by these folks that really have no job except to get in there and do bad things. And that, we have agentic AI, which is really coming on board, which is very cool. Wherein, we used to have kind of an assistant, but now we're going to have an agent who can take initiative in AI. And
Mm.
the problem with the threat actors is they're going to employ agentic AI to go in and open up backdoors of data and get in there and manipulate data, steal data, and all these things. So I'll just mention for Blue Atlas Group, we're doing it different. We're restricted, closed. We have our own servers, and we work with clients, whether it's government, intel community, or just private business clients, to protect against all those things that can happen. So we're just doing it different. We're going a little bit slower. We're being a little more cautious, but that's the way that we see we need to do it, especially to protect against, countries, like China and Russia that want to get into our data, manipulate it, and really carry it to, kind of the problem areas.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, are these benefits why you are leaning into the AI world, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I love new things, right? So I got involved in the anti-money laundering field for about 3 years because it was something I didn't completely understand, and I wanted to get in there and really understand it. And so I did that. But now I see AI as really the future. But I'm concerned, as my background in counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and just things that I've seen, the darkness around the world, that AI is cool as long as you have some kind of guardrails in place, and folks are not going to get around those guardrails. So to me, again, it's all about protecting the U.S. Western countries in this AI realm, especially if clients are focused on, I want to protect my own proprietary data. So yeah, so I'm rolling deep into AI, but I'm also doing it a little bit different with our group, in that we want to offer clients something that is not exposed to all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to the final question, which is, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to those looking to pursue a similar career? And what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered?
Hmm. Well, a couple things here, and I've talked to so many, high school students, college students through the years, Karen, that kind of have the same question. If you want to head, and the FBI is going through a reset, which I think is important right now.
Yeah,
I think that
100%.
there's political influence that needs to be cut out of the FBI, but the agents, the street agents on the ground, for the most part, are just going and doing their jobs every day, thwarting evil, and that's where I lived for my 21 years in the FBI. But what I say to prepare now would be my first point. Like, I always tell high school students, college students, like, do things different. Take a very unique language. Take Chinese, take Russian, take Farsi, take Arabic, something like that. Take Afrikaans,
Mandarin.
right? Take a unique language, because everyone takes Spanish in America, right? But you
Yeah, of
want to
course.
stand out and you want to be a little bit different. I'll say, travel as much as you can. Go to, austere countries. Go to Africa. Go to Kenya. Go do
Mm.
these things. And also, I'll say, also toss in, take some kind of martial arts. Like I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but take something that's just kind of makes you stand out a little bit. So
Yes.
if you're sitting there in a panel interview, I think do some of those things that make you stand out. Second point I'd say is, no, it's not easy. Carrying a gun 24/7 for 20 something years, to the convenience store, whatever, you're always in a situation where you may have to use that, or, I was on task forces for 13 years in a lot of crack houses, in a lot of bad places. And for me, I got to go to a lot of, places in Africa that were dangerous, and I loved every minute of it, but it's not easy. It's not, you're not going to
Yeah, and it's definitely
just,
not for everybody because I think people also like maybe just to sorry to interject, but also probably suffer from PTSD or have things that mentally or emotionally impact them. So I'm sure it's not a career that's fit for everybody.
yeah, very true. I mean, I worked child pornography for 5 years, right? I for some reason was able to compartmentalize that and kind of leave that at the office when I would drive home, right? And to this day, it doesn't really affect me, but some people are very affected by that. Everyone's very different, and so there's a lot of darkness in the career. You just have to realize that. But also, I always tell people, like, if you don't want to carry a gun, you can always be an analyst, and you can still be in the fight.
Yes.
But I think the third thing I'd mention, Karen, is it's very exciting. I loved going to work every single day for the most part. Like, you never knew what was going to happen. You could get sent places. You're doing just incredibly interesting things every day. So those are, kind of my three, top points there. And as far as legacy, like, I'm still in it. Like, I love what I'm doing. I just want to be in the fight and just raise my hand and do things.
Yes.
But I want to, I think at the end, people say, he did hard things. I love that because I always wanted to kind of lean into that and work with people that did. And so that's, and do it with integrity, along the way. So those are some of the thoughts, and I really appreciate you, bringing me on and being able to go into some depth on all this. So it's been really exciting conversation.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And it would be great to have you back in the future. So, if people want to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Yeah, I'm, very much out there on LinkedIn. Find me, Brig Barker, on LinkedIn, and please reach out and connect with me. And and I've got our website on there and everything for Blue Atlas Group. So that's probably the best way.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brig. And we look forward to having you back in the future.
Thanks, Karen. It was fun.